Israel's deputy foreign minister has confirmed his Democratic Congresswoman Tlaib and Omar entry to Israel. They were expected to arrive this weekend and spend 5 days meeting with Israeli and Palestinian groups. Earlier today, President Trump urged Israel not to let them visit. He tweeted this: "It would show great weakness if Israel allowed Representative Omar and Representative Tlaib to visit. They hate Israel and all Jewish people, and there is nothing that can be said or done to change their minds. Minnesota and Michigan will have a hard time putting them back in office. They are a disgrace!" Exclamation point. End of tweet. And reaction, as you might imagine, is pouring in. Presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders tweeted this: "Banning Congresswomen Omar and Tlaib from entering in Israel and Palestine is a sign of enormous disrespect to those elected leaders, to the United States, Congress, and to the principles of democracy. The Israeli government should reverse this decision and allow them in." The senator mentioned Palestine, but while there are Palestinians, there's actually no actual state of Palestine. And moments ago, a member of the so-called squad, Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, tweeted this: "I'm calling this, like I cited, and cruel. Any leader committed to advancing democracy would welcome with open arms two democratically elected United States Congresswomen. And every single member of Congress should be calling this out." You could hardly contain yourself. Why?
Because I thought that President Trump's tweet was so funny, and it's so sort of unexpected, or not unexpected from him, but not something you expect from a politician. But, you know, Israel has the right to determine who comes into their country and who doesn't come into their country. You know, I find it kind of amusing that people like Bernie Sanders think that he ought to be saying he ought to determine who gets to go into their country. And the bottom line is, and President Trump's tweet, as unusual as that was, mentions this, and this is the most important thing. I don't particularly like these congresswomen, but what I think doesn't matter. The only thing that matters are the people who elected them. And if somebody wants to do something about those two people, you're going to have to get their constituents to vote them out of office. And that's the way it works here in America.
Leslie?
I think that Israel would have shown strength had they allowed them to come in, and for a few reasons. One, if you're going to be a fellow beacon of democracy, then you have to be a fellow beacon of freedom. And one of the greatest freedoms that America has is the freedom of speech. You may not like what they say, but they have the right to say it. Secondly, you're looking at one of these congresswomen is Palestinian. And I get tired, being of Jewish ancestry, of hearing people that are anti-Israel or anti-Jew. That is not true. I know many Jews that are in favor of a two-state solution or are pro-Palestinian, and they're not against themselves or anti-Semitic or Jewish. These are two elected American congresswomen.
But do you understand, though, that they want to treat Israeli citizens the way they're being treated in this instance?
That is wrong.
By supporting boycott, divest, sanction, they want to not allow Israeli citizens to come here to the U.S. They want to treat Israel the way that we look at Iran. Iran hangs people and has so far this year. There is a huge difference. And they also made the distinction that if Representative Tlaib wants to go to visit her family, that they will let her in. They're not going to let her in to go to a conference where she's going to organize with BDS people.
Right.
That's the difference. She can go visit her family, but she is going there to organize against Israel inside Israel. Why would they let her in?
Right. I want to get this tweet in from Senator Elizabeth Warren, one of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. And this was just before the official Israeli announcement. Israel doesn't advance its case as a tolerant democracy or unwavering U.S. ally by barring elected members of Congress from visiting because of their political views. This would be a shameful, unprecedented move. I urge Israel's government to allow Ilhan and Tlaib entry. And you say what?
I just want to give a little bit more context about what's going on here. This is not a decision that President Trump has made for Israel. Israeli officials were speaking throughout the night. They've been debating this since this trip was announced in July by Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. It's been a very difficult conversation officials have had there because they were set up and put in a bad situation by Ilhan Omar, and this is why. She introduced the resolution, the BDS resolution, in support of the BDS movement, which is geared towards eliminating Israel. It is founded by a man man who does not believe the state of Israel has a right to exist. And then the day after, she provocatively announced that she was going on a trip to Israel with Rashida Tlaib, knowing that Israel has a long-standing policy of not allowing people who support BDS into the country. So they set this up so that if Israel let them in, they are violating their own policy and going against what the standard that they hold for everybody else, or they deny them, and now they're all making the argument they are not pro-democratic, they are not pro-free speech, when this isn't about free speech. This is about them supporting a movement that denies their ability to exist. And by the way, BDS doesn't just hurt Jews in Israel. It actually hurts Palestinians and has eliminated thousands of jobs for Palestinians living in Israel and the West Bank.
So where is the Democratic Party going here? I mean, you have a binary choice time and time again, week after week. And it isn't just about Israel. It's about a whole host of issues that have come up via these women. And, you know, you can talk about whether or not Twitter is where any of this should play out. But certainly in Congress, as they come back at the end of the summer, where do the Democrats go?
Well, we haven't seen any legislation put forth that echoes the sentiments of these two congresswomen with regard to BDS. But what we have seen consistently, even prior to these women being elected to Congress, is Democrats who have favored a two-state solution, who are against the constant building of settlements by the Israelis, and that doesn't help with the peace process. It doesn't help with a two-state solution. And might I say, having lived in Israel in 1996, prior to going there, like I said, you know, having a Jewish parent, I was brought up that the Israelis, Jews are good and Palestinians are bad, quite frankly, that they're not oppressed. And that's not what I saw when I lived there with my own eyes. I saw something different. I saw oppression, and I was upset that my people, if you will, were the oppressors. And these women, one of them being Palestinian, that is what she is fighting for. She's fighting for her family who is there. So I think that Democrats have been trying to look at this through a different lens.
Can I just respond to that real quickly?
I want to get this in just real quickly, Katie. After barring the Congresswoman, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, now says Israel is open to all criticism, but not calls for boycotts which harm the state.
There's a big gulf between what you're saying, which makes logical sense, and supporting BDS.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you really have to look at the hate speech. I mean, you talk about people who've said inflammatory things, just look at BDS's Twitter feed. I mean, you cannot support this group and say that you're on the side of democracy or you're on the side of peace. There's just a big gulf between what you said and supporting this movement.
And with all due respect, Leslie, there's a lot that's happened since 1996. I mean, you had the Israel give up Gaza, and the response to that has been thousands of rockets into Israel. Just last week, they killed and arrested a number of terrorists coming into Israel from Gaza. The issue here is not about free speech. It's about them supporting a movement that is not about the two-state solution. It's about supporting Israel from the map that destroys the Jewish state and the country, and that is what they are supporting. It is provocative action, and they are going there to continue talking about that and supporting that inside the very country that they want to destroy.
Charlie, I want to get you back in here because I do think that there's some apples and oranges here. And as the Prime Minister pointed out, I mean, these aren't just American citizens going over. These are Congress, elected members of Congress. So when you talk about them supporting a group like BDS, does that impact the conversation in an important way versus you and I or somebody else?
Oh, I think absolutely, by all means. But and I think that Leslie brings up a very important point about the fact that, you know, they haven't introduced any legislation. But as with this, as with a lot of things, the party has very much been hijacked by these four members, and they're driving the conversation. Just watch the Democratic debates. They're about things like the Green New Deal. They're about giving, you know, illegals free health care. It's really crazy. And I think the Twitter thing.
And they're not just driving the conversation in certain instances that they're drowning it out.
Yeah, and
they're overshadowing those 2020 candidates.
And the Twitter thing is an important part of it. It's because they have that voice on Twitter that has the whole rest of the party. It's like the wagging the dog thing.
I got to step in with breaking news.